Hi there, Jamie here today at Teachers Tech. Hope you're having a great day today. Today I want to show you how you can create a multiple dependent drop-down list in Google Sheets. So what I mean by this is if you have one cell, you choose something, it's dependent, the answer you get will be dependent on what you choose. So in this case, I have a drop-down. You can see I have different fruit. If I choose oranges, now this drop down was dependent upon what I chose. So I see a list of oranges. And when I choose something here, you can see the amount remaining was dependent upon what was in here. So I can have multiple places. So if I choose apples, drop down, now I have a list of apples, and then I'm going to have the amount left. So that's what I want to show you how to create at Teachers Tech today. So if you want to follow along with this tutorial, I'll put a link to this spreadsheet down below in the description, and then all you have to do is go File, make a copy, and then you'll have your own copy in your Google Drive. Now, first of all, there's a couple things that we're going to be working with. We'll be working with a function, and we'll be working with data validation. So data validation is the drop-down that allows us to put the drop-down in. The function, and I just want to start talking about the function, what it is we're going to use here, and it is the indirect function. And what the indirect function does, you kind of tell a place, you put an address in, and it will display what you put there. So that could either be a cell or a name range, and I'll show you how to do that too. So for an example, in A1 right here, I have fruit order form. I'm just going to type A1 just like that. So it's like an address. If I go ahead and then use this function and go equals indirect, so here it is right here, indirect, and I just click on this cell and I'm just going to close it and hit enter. Notice even though I clicked on, told it to go to this cell, it put in this information because that A1 was an address to this spot. So you can do it with a cell, but you can also do it with a range. So in this case, I have certain list here that I'm going to make turn into named ranges, and that's what we're going to do next. So I just want to point out in this practice spreadsheet that you have, there's two tabs down below. We have sheet 1, which has this information, and then there's quantity, which we're going to be adding to this third column to pop up once we choose the type. Now, the first thing what we're going to do is do the data validation on this first one. So what that means is there's going to be a drop down, and that drop down is going to be dependent upon these items right here, the fruit. And it's very quick to do this. So if I go ahead and just go select where I want this drop-down list to be, I can go to data, and then I just go to data validation. So at this point, I already selected where I wanted it to go. So it's sheet 1, A6, and that's correct. Criteria, list from a range. Yes, that's correct. Enter a range or formula. What I'm going to do is just select this. I'll move this out of the way a bit, and I can highlight what I want. So these four right here. So I hit OK. And this looks all good. Show drop down list and cell, hit save. And look at this. I have a drop down here that's dependent upon these 4 items. Now, let's say if I wanted to change it, I can just go back up to data validation again, and maybe I knew I was going to add more. So if I go ahead and select, and I'm just going to go to the blank spot right here, hit OK. So I'm just going to hit save. Doesn't look like anything changed here, but what that allows me to do now is if I type pairs like this, drop down, pairs is there. So dynamically updated as soon as I entered it. I delete it, and then as I drop down, it's gone again. So that's the first step. So we have our first drop-down list dependent upon these headings. Now, what we want to have happen is when we pick something like oranges, we need to have another drop-down list that gives us these things right here. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, we are going to use the indirect function, but what we need to do is do some named ranges. And to do a named range, what we're going to do, we're going to have to call them exactly the same of the headers here that matches this. So when someone chooses apples, it's going to look for a named range called apples. So what I need to do is I'm going to start with just highlighting the different apples that I need to have in the range. So I'm going to just highlight these 3 to begin with, go up to data, and go to named ranges. When I click on it, you can see this pops open. This is where I name it. So I need to call this apples. It needs to be spelled exactly the same as what's going to be in the drop down, the heading. So it's not going to work if you do a typo in it. I'm going to go ahead. I can see the range is correct. I'm going to hit done. I'm going to add another range because I need to do bananas. This is going to be bananas, these two right here. So I'm going to type bananas like so and hit done. Now I'll just move over a bit more and we'll do the last two here. So I'll highlight oranges here, and this is just like so. It has the right thing highlighted, hit done. And my last one, I need a new range. This is going to be called lemons, and highlight just here, these three, hit done. There's my different ranges that I have right now. Now I wanted to point out with any of these, I can go back and edit. If this closes down, just go back to data, named ranges, it opens up again. And if I was going to go I'm going to hit edit on apples. Let's say I knew that I was going to actually add more apples. Well, maybe I want to change the range then. I'm going to have the spots ready so I could add some more to it. So I'm selecting a larger area. So you could do that to each of these if you knew the list were going to get longer. So I'm going to hit OK and done. So what I need to do now is using the indirect function. I can't go right into this cell yet. I need to create a kind of a list in order to redirect it into the spot with data validation. So normally I would put it way over here, kind of hide it, or even on another sheet. But for this tutorial here, I'm just going to put it here so you can see kind of everything at once. And I'll put it right in this cell here. So I'm going to use the indirect equals, and I'm going to type in indirect, here it is, and I'm going to reference a cell. So if I reference this cell right here, A6, so what that means is whatever it says, so if it says lemons in this cell, well, we have a range named lemon. So it should give me the that list back. So I hit enter, and there it is. If I go back and check and I'm like, oh, I made a mistake. What was my mistake? Or do I have lemons? Something's up with my list, I can tell, because that's not correct. So if I go over to lemons, look here, I have it wrong. So if I go oranges, so I need to correct this. So this is what I was talking about before. If I go back and pick my range, what is it I want? I hit OK and hit done. And let's try this again. Make sure that we can see lemons is actually selected now. I go back and I'll just change it. Bananas, you can see it changes. If I go back to lemons, there, that's correct. So I made a change. I could see something was wrong. Now this indirect tells me that it looks at this word is connected to a named range, and then it places it right here where I told it. But I want this to be in a drop down. So what I'm going to do at this spot here is use my data validation. Go to data validation right here again and enter my range. I'm going to go here. So what's my range? Now, sometimes what people do is just click the first one and hit OK and hit save. The problem with this, if I go at lemons and then drop down, notice it's only giving me the first one. I have these other ones. I'm going to go back and go to data validation again. I need to make sure my range is going to be long enough to cover everything for all the lists too for the drop down. So I'd probably want to go extras. I know this is plenty for my example here tonight. Hit OK, hit save. So when I go back here, I can see all of them now. So if I chose bananas, this right here is reflecting this. And like what I said is I wouldn't put this in kind of main site. I would probably hide it off where people aren't going to see it, or put it on a different sheet, or hide that part. But for today's, I'm showing you so you can see what happens when this changes. Here we get our different list pops open, and then it's reflected in this list here. So that's the first two dependent drop downs. I do want to do that one more, what I mentioned, but what I want to point out is with the quantity, and as I talked about this ladyfinger, what's wrong with ladyfinger? Well, when I have to go through and create named lists out of these, so that part is easy. So if I go, I can click in here. I have my named ranges still open. I hit named range. I can call this Fuji because I have to keep things named the same. So I now have Fuji's. If I go, I have to do this to each of the lists. But the problem is here with Ladyfinger, you can't have any spaces in your named ranges, or you can't start it with a number or use true or false in it. So I will need to fix this, I could use an underscore here, but that means I also have to fix it here for it to be reflected when it gets chosen. So I'd have to go underscore here, and when I name it over here, it's going to be this same thing. So I'm going to go through and I named the first one. I'm going to go through and just name this entire list by clicking on each one. So this one right here would be Honeycrisp, like this, and hit done. So I'm going to go just finish off this list, and then I'll come back. So I finished off the list here, and I have to make a quick change to bananas that I saw when I was rewatching that come up. So I'm just going to go check by range, make sure it's this here, hit OK, and done. So that should reflect now if I have bananas, there they are right there. I can even see the ladyfinger is coming in with the underscore. I didn't have to use underscore. I could have pushed it together and just made one long word. I just chose the underscore with it. So in this last spot, all I really need is a just indirect, because I'm not doing a data validation dropdown. I could do another dropdown if I wanted to, but in this case, I'm just going to do a indirect. So I'll just start typing my function in. Here it comes up. And what is it that I want to have? So if they choose this, I want it to say the reflect depending upon the how many are left of that. So if I hit enter, 3. If I go over to quantity, you can see there's 3. If I go and change this number to 10 and go back, it reflects right away on it. If you wanted to have another row below it here, you could copy this one down. So I could just pull down, and I'm going to get the drop down just like before. But what you'll need to do is create more of these places here. So where am I going to have this, where am I going to be pulling it from? Because this one right here, remember, is based on this choice right here. So if you do have a double one, so what I mean is if I just create another one right beside it, again, I wouldn't do this on a normal way just to keep things so you can see it. If I was using my equals indirect here, just like I showed you, and where is it based on this time? Well, it's based on this one, and hit return. So now as this one changes to something else, you can see it changes. Then this is where I'd have to put my data validation in, and you can go back and select your spot that you need, hit OK, and save it. So now this is going to reflect, and then the next step would be the same on that line. So you can have those multiple ones. You just followed the steps that I did before. When we put this one, this would just again be that last one with indirect here, and it's going to be based on what they pick here. Hit return, and you're going to get 56. Just like that. So you could have those multiple rows if you want. So I hope you like this way of using the multiple dependent drop down list inside Google Sheets. I did do the other Microsoft one. So if you're Microsoft Excel, I'll put the link to that one below and up in the card. So thanks for watching this week on Teacher's Tech. I'll see you next time with more tech tips and tutorials.